Vast, dark territories covered the land, and ancient great lanterns, enormous brass towers of light, known by the people as the rockets, kept the darkness at bay. The rockets allowed life to continue, albeit harshly, in the villages that crowded into their halos. A dedicated guild of lamplighters travelled between the great lanterns on long and dangerous expeditions, maintaining the flames. In the world as it was, the Halflight was not empty. It held things, settlements, warmth, the small amber lights of people who had chosen to stay. Chapter 1. The Ordinary Departure. This is Calderwick, a place that has been lived in long enough to feel like an extension of the people inside it. Every building leaned slightly toward its neighbour. Every lantern burned a little longer than it needed to. At the settlement gate, one light never went out. Nobody noticed it anymore. That is the nature of reliable things. His name was Elias. He was a lamplighter. He went to the places where the darkness was most complete, and he pushed it back. Not with courage. Courage was for people who had a choice. With competence. With the particular grace of a man who had done the same hard thing so many times that it had stopped feeling like sacrifice and started feeling like weather. Every departure began like this. Before his family woke, before the settlement stirred. Standing in the kitchen in the dark, eating something he couldn't taste, holding something warm that wasn't quite warm enough. She'd packed his bag last night, pre-flight. His son always knew. Children know the shape of a leaving before they know the word for it. Finn had learned to walk downstairs in the dark without being asked, had learned to press against his father's side without explaining why. He'd learned to ask the questions adults were afraid to ask, because children haven't yet learned that some answers change things. How far this time? Far. Farther than the second reach? Yes. And I think it's going to be a long, long time. Okay. One word. Carrying everything a 7-year-old could carry, and carrying it without complaint. There was a map, a document that makes distance comprehensible, that turns the incomprehensible fact of absence into a line on paper, a route, a set of lantern symbols at the edge of the known world. Elias traced the route with one finger, slowly, the way you run your finger along something you're about to leave. In the doorway, his wife watched. She was the kind of person who shows up without announcing herself, because she knows the value of simply being present. The commission arrived at first grey light with a cold thud on the door. It always does. Urgency never waits for a convenient morning. 0 hour, 5 a.m. There were 3 lanterns in the outer reach that had been failing. Only Elias had the experience to reach them in time. The guild did not ask. They informed. There is a difference, and the couple in that doorway knew it. They read the papers together. Not the words. They both already knew the words. They read each other's faces, a jawline tightening. A second reading that found nothing different. Papers folded into a pocket. Then her hands on his collar. Not because it needed straightening, because hands need somewhere to go when there is nothing left to say. His hand, briefly, over hers. That was everything. He walked toward the gate without looking back. He always walked without looking back until the last possible moment. Then, just before the gate, he stopped, turned, looked back at his house, warm in all its windows, his wife in the doorway, not waving, just present. And in the upper window, his son, holding the small lantern they had made together, the warmth of it catching his face from below, making him look like something ancient and small at the same time. Then Finn pursed his lips and blew. The window went dark. He was imitating his father's work. He was showing that he understood what lamplighters do. They carry the light somewhere it is needed, and they leave the lit places behind. Elias stood at the gate. He held the sight of that dark window for one long breath. Then he turned and walked into the grey. Chapter 2. The Outer Reach. The road dissolved. This is something that does not happen in settled territories. Roads there have edges, purpose, confidence. Out here, roads became suggestions, directions rather than paths. The ground simply continued in the direction you were already moving. At the edge of the known world, a single guild post, a cold stone monolith marking the boundary of safety. He touched it as he passed. The way you touch a landmark you won't see again for a long time. Then he stepped past it, into the outer reach. The first outer lantern stood in the middle of nowhere, a tall silhouette with a cold, unlit beacon at the top. It was further away than it looked. It took an hour to reach, and he climbed it without ceremony. Elias was as high as a kite by then. He serviced the mechanism with movements so practiced they required no thought. This is the strange discipline of the lamplighter's work. You make the light. You do not stay in it. The flame caught. The light blazed outward into the featureless grey, a warm and enormous and entirely impersonal light, illuminating nothing that needed illuminating, going nowhere that anyone was going. Elias descended and looked up at it. He walked on. The lantern burned behind him, patient and indifferent, doing exactly what it was made to do. He made camp in a circle of rocks on the plain that night. A small fire, food from his pack, his work on the enormous lantern doing its job in the night sky in the distance behind him, and the vast dark ahead of him. And in between, one man eating quietly in a circle of his own making. He took the drawing from his breast pocket. A child's drawing of a lamplighter, carrying an oversized lantern, drawn with the particular seriousness of a 7-year-old who was trying to get the important details right. He held it near the fire's warmth, not looking at it with sentimentality, looking at it the way people look at things that hurt in a way they have accepted. Then he folded it carefully, returned it to his pocket, and lay down. In the distance, the tower lantern burned enormous and reliably. He slept beneath its watchful eye. He missed his home so much. He missed his wife. It was lonely out in the space. In the morning, at the very edge of the horizon, a vertical, the second lantern. a warm, amber-brown shape against grey, the only warm thing in the frame of the world. He walked toward it. His pace didn't change. It never did. He climbed. The flame chamber at the top of the second lantern was the richest warmth he had experienced since leaving Calderwick. Golden light filling every surface, every glass panel, every corner. He stood in it for a moment. It was the warmth of the thing he had made last year and was working well. Not home's warmth. Not the warmth of someone who loved him. The warmth of a lantern. He pressed his forehead to the glass. Through the chamber's curved panels, across the vast grey plain, at the absolute limit of what could be seen. Tiny, warm, amber points. The distant settlements. Calderwick somewhere among them, indistinguishable from here, impossible to single out. Just warmth. Just the collective glow of everywhere he was not. His hand moved to his chest pocket. He found the folded drawing. He didn't take it out, just rested his palm against it. There are moments in a person's life when the distance between where they are and where they belong becomes briefly, completely visible. This was one of those moments. He held it as long as he could. Then he straightened, picked up his tools, and descended without looking back. The third lantern stood in a landscape that had given up on detail. The world here had become geometry, angular shapes, stripped colour. A landscape that was beginning to resemble a diagram of itself, rather than the thing itself. The third lantern was damaged and burning weakly. Not a simple repair, it was burning out the fuse up there alone. A structural failure, a wound in the mechanism's core. It would be days of careful, solitary work. Days he had not planned for. He set his pack down. He did not curse. He did not despair. He began. Time bent. Later, he would not be able to account for all of it. He worked. He slept on the chamber floor. He woke and worked again. The days blurred at the edges, and then blurred further, until the edges were gone, and there was only the work. Sometimes, not often, and never for long, a flame danced and died. A warmth on the chamber wall, the colour of a particular kitchen in pre-dawn light. The smell of something he couldn't name, but recognised completely. He blinked these away. In the middle of working, his own body began to look unfamiliar. He noticed it in his hands. Large, capable, tool-worn hands. He would look at them sometimes and wonder, briefly, whose they were. He worked, slept, and worked some more. And on the fourth day, the repair was complete, though he had stopped counting days. He fed the wick, struck the light, and the third lantern blazed back to life. Full, brilliant, a new housing, and the warmest and largest light he had ever made. He stood in it. He should have felt completion, the profound satisfaction of a difficult thing done. He felt nothing he had a word for. Not grief, not pride, not emptiness. Something that occupied the space where all three should have been. He opened his journal to log the date, counted backward through the entries. 4 days. He looked at his hands. He said to no one, in the warm light of the greatest lantern he had ever repaired, I don't know how long I've been gone." Then he picked up his pack and began the long walk home. Chapter 3. The Return. The world warmed again as he returned, layer by layer. The cold grey stepping back through neutral, through ochre, through amber. Settlement lanterns appearing at the horizon like a question he already knew the answer to. Calderwick's gate lantern appeared first. He saw it before anything else. He walked faster. She opened the door before he knocked. She had heard his particular step on the road. She looked at him. He looked at her. She stepped forward and held him. And then she drew back and looked at him with the careful, focused attention of a woman who had been paying very close attention to this face for many years, and who had just found something in it she recognized, and was not glad to have recognized. She said nothing. She pulled him inside. His son told stories at the dinner table. He was good at stories. He told them with his whole body, adjusting his voice for different characters, building to his climax with the confidence of a child who knows he has the room. Martha reached across the table and put her hand on Elias's. He blinked, came back, squeezed her hand, smiled at his son. The warmth resumed. But she knew. And he knew she knew. The next day, Elias was summoned to a meeting at the Guildhall, a dusty but ornate chamber where the village leaders decided on civil affairs. He asked Martha to come with him. The guild elder unrolled a new map. On it, at the very edge of the known world, further than the 3 outer lanterns, further than anywhere a lamplighter had gone, a single grey symbol. A 4th lantern. Unmapped, unlit. The elder spoke about it carefully, about what it would mean, the safe territory it could create, the lives it could protect, a generation of different futures. He looked at Elias while he spoke. No one else did. They walked home through the settlement in silence, the kind of silence that has already made its decision. Their footsteps sounded on the cobblestones. Her hand in his was small and still. Neither of them started the conversation, because they both already knew how it would end. That night, Elias stood in his son's room. Finn was asleep, face slack and peaceful. Elias reached into his pocket, took out the drawing, the lamplighter Finn had drawn for him, soft from months of being folded and refolded and carried. He crossed to the table, placed it there, upright, facing the room. It looked like a gift. It also looked like something being returned to its rightful owner. Then Martha's voice, from the dark hallway behind him, barely above a whisper. "Tell me you're not already thinking about going." He didn't answer. His silence was not cruelty. It was the most honest thing he could offer. He nodded and walked to their bedroom. Chapter 4. The Last Light. Before dawn, the kitchen. She was sitting at the table already. The commission papers and maps spread on the table. She had placed them there herself. She looked at him clearly, without anger, without martyrdom, the look of a woman who had worked through the night to arrive at a place of difficult peace. Come back. 2 words, everything in them, said without looking up. "I will," he said. His hands covered hers. Then he stood and took the papers. His son stood in the kitchen doorway in yesterday's clothes. He looked at his father's pack by the door. He crossed without being asked and put his arms around his father's waist. When he stepped back, he held out something. The lantern from his room that Elias had made for him. Elias looked at it, then gently took it from Finn's hands and placed it carefully on the stone counter. "Keep it lit." His son nodded manfully, his chin lifted. "I will." The journey to the fourth lantern was the longest. The world through which he walked became something other than landscape. The layers simplified and simplified again until the world was almost pure geometry. Flat forms, angular horizons, a landscape from which all warmth had been carefully removed, leaving only structure. He moved through it with the same unhurrying pace. He was becoming a figure in a landscape, rather than its subject. It appeared at the horizon as a shape that didn't fit. Then, closer, real. The fourth great lantern, the Odysseus rocket, as the elders had called it. Taller than the others, more complex in its architecture, older in feeling, as though it had been waiting here for a very long time. It had never been lit. It had been waiting for exactly the person who was walking toward it. Elias stood before it. For the first time in this journey, he looked small. He climbed every terrace, every platform, every layer of the ancient tower. He was not young anymore. He was weary from the journey. At the top, the flame chamber, the tools, the housing, the wick. He prepared a light to work by and tethered himself to the solid chamber wall. He worked with careful precision. His hands were steady. They had always been steady. He struck the light. The fourth lantern didn't ignite like the others. It ignited like something that had been holding its breath for centuries. The flame caught slowly like all the other lanterns in the outreach. And then it rose and it blazed, and the light that poured outward was not merely illumination. It was a supernovic, deep, golden bloom that reached the horizon. A light that pushed the cool grey back in every direction, that changed the landscape. He had made the greatest light of his life, and he was entirely alone in it. He turned away from the scorching blaze and reached into his pocket. Nothing. He checked the other pocket. Nothing. The drawing was gone. He had left it with Finn. His hand found only empty cloth. He looked at his hands and closed his fingers around nothing. The flame roared and soared and filled the chamber, burning brighter than the sun they had lost. Finn grew up with a lantern in his room, the memory of a father and a mother who watched him with careful attention, and a drawing that he'd carried everywhere until the paper was too soft to fold anymore, was framed forever at his bedside. Finn is now 14 and is growing into a tall, strong-shouldered tribute to his father. He is the apple of Martha's eye, just as Elias was the tree under which she sheltered. He stands outside the guild door, a lamplighter's pack on his back, the drawing taken from its frame and folded carefully into his breast pocket. He stands by the half-open door, peering in. He pauses. He looks back. Across the road, his mother is in the doorway of their house, watching him the way she had always watched his father, with the same quiet pride, the same difficult peace. Their eyes meet across the square. Finn nods. She nods back. He goes through the door. Early the next morning, outside the village gate, the warm amber light of Calderwick glowing behind it, lanterns burning steady. A figure walks away into the grey, growing smaller, and then gone. The gate remains open. The warm light stays. Because somewhere, far in the outer reach, a colossal lantern burns that wasn't burning before. Made by someone deeply loved, who wasn't expected to stay there, but left everlasting warmth and light behind.